You don't need magic to disappear for a while, because Firestone tires were built for ticking off mile markers. Firestone Destination LE3 tires for 70,000 miles of exploring. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone.
Bauer Built Tire Service has been a family name in the tire business since 1944. Founded by Sam Bauer in Durand, Wisconsin, the company started as a small operation and has since grown into a powerhouse with 35 locations across 9 states. At the center of the growth is Jerry Bauer, who stepped into the leadership role at just 24 years old. Under his guidance, Bauer Built expanded beyond its roots, balancing family ownership with smart business strategy to become one of the most respected independent tire dealers in the country. But Jerry's impact doesn't stop there. Today, he's mentoring the next generation of leaders, including his own children, Tad and Mandy, who are now key leaders in the business. Jerry joins us on Johnny G and Friends to talk about the lessons he's learned, the challenges of running a family business, and how Bauer Built has stayed strong for 80 years and counting. Welcome to Season 5 of Johnny G and Friends. I'm Johnny G, and on today's podcast, we're joined by Jerry Bauer, CEO and Chairman of the Board of Bauer Built Tire up in beautiful Durand, Wisconsin. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to being here.
You know, Jer, I go back into the late 80s. I was in Akron, Ohio, heading up Firestone brand. And two of my mentors, who you knew real well, Tom Mertz and Bill Tierney, said to me one day, "Hey, kid, we got to get you up to Durand to meet Sam Bauer, because his kid's already taken over 10 years ago, and you need to meet him." And, Jer, if I remember correctly, your dad turned the keys of the store over to you and made you president when you were just 24 years old. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep. I was running our wholesale business at the time, and Dad decided to sell the majority of the interest in the company to myself, my brother Jim, and 4 of my brother-in-laws. And he made me president of the company. He went to chairman of the board, and he stayed there for another 4 years as chairman of the board, and then he retired in 1980. I talk about my dad when I used to complain to him. He used to say, "When I was your age, I used to deliver fuel oil in 5-gallon pails up the hill." And it took me a long time, but I never could figure out why every customer was up the hill. But that was one of his sayings. So I quit complaining. But, it's interesting. I mean, we talked about my dad in the early years, and his brother Ray got involved in the business with him too early on. And they were inventors. I mean, they were pioneers when they did retreading, when you couldn't go to a Firestone or a Band-Aid or a Michelin and buy a process. They went to the Louisville Retreaders Convention, and they would buy inspecting equipment and install it in their shop, and then they go buy a buffer, and then they go buy somebody else's builder, and they'd buy somebody else's molds and chambers and things like that, and they assembled all of it. So they were pretty much pioneers in those early days, and built a great foundation for us.
Unbelievable. Yeah. You think back all the stuff that our parents did for us and set the tone to pave the way and made it our lives much easier. And I think you're doing the same as I'm doing for my kids and you do for your kids. Let them make their own mistakes and do everything, but, give them that right path to go down. And that's awesome.
You'll get a kick out of this. I'm looking over here at the side of my wall, and there's a picture of my dad and me at our 50th anniversary of the company. And he died about 3 months after that. And the picture that's framed there, it's got our company anniversary keychain logo or whatever on there, was given to me by Larry Kicks. Remember Larry?
Oh, of course.
Larry Kicks, absolutely. Yeah. Larry's passed away and gone now, but it's just some of the memories that exist out there in our industry and that. And Larry took that picture of my dad and I. He didn't know at the time when he took the picture and framed it and gave it to me that my dad would be gone in a month or two. And it's the last picture of my dad. So it's kind of special.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, congratulations. 81 years coming up this year, right?
Yep. In April, we'll be 81 years old.
The amount of companies, Jared, that last that long are like in the tenths of a percent, and you guys have really represented the tire industry well, both doing stuff for the NTDRA back in those days, and all the relationships you built, like we talked about with the Morgans and the Weens and the Zigglers and everybody. So it's been a great ride. I think if anybody ever asked me, Johnny G, you could come back again. You could be a professional athlete, or you could do whatever. I always say, put me back in the tire business. They were the
Yeah.
greatest people, around. Wouldn't you say the same?
Yeah. It's been a great run. I think I pretty much knew. My dad had 5 daughters before I came along, so I pretty much think he had my destiny was pretty well sealed once I was born that I was headed to the tire business. So
Beautiful. But so during that time, you were leading a team of employees and siblings that were much older than you. Was there ever a moment where you felt you had to prove yourself to others or even to yourself in those early years?
oh yeah, there were occasional times in that, and you're right. I took over when I took over the company. I had all my dad's soldiers that were working with him that I had to transition through and eventually build my own team. Then, in addition to having the people that were working with my dad, I had 6 brother-in-laws who were owners in the company, a brother, and all their spouses. So at one time there was 18 shareholders, including my mom and dad, all family members in the company, and I had to work through all of them, and I had to demonstrate to them that I could do the job because they could probably decide to have somebody else put in charge. Yeah,
Ousted you,
yeah.
yes. So Bauer Built, as you said, is a true family business with dozens of family members that are involved. Do you guys get together on holidays? Is there tire talk, or can you just talk normal stuff?
Well, we can talk normal stuff. I mean, today, over the years, it was always been different because I bought out all the brother-in-laws and my brother Jim over time, and in I think it was 2006 when I bought out the last brother-in-law, and the business became pretty much Sue's and mine for a short period of time, and then I started transferring ownership to my son and daughter, and they became partners in the business and started growing the business with us. So today, the business is in just my family, myself and my 2 kids, and our spouses, and my grandkids are involved in some of the ownership as well. So, but at the holidays, yeah, we were able to separate business and pleasure. We were able to enjoy it.
Very good. So you talk about Tad and Mandy, your son and daughter. Great kids, by the way. Great kids.
Thank you.
They're now major players in the company. What's been the most surprising thing that they've taught you about leadership or even the business itself?
Well, it's interesting. When I took over from my dad, and actually 1980s when he fully retired, and I was not only the president then, I wasn't CEO then, I didn't use that title, but I was president and chairman of the board, and I had to lead my brother and my brother-in-laws through the business. But when my dad, the 4 years when he was still involved with us, he turned it over to me. He was able to sit back and relax, and he really enjoyed the fact that we could get along together. All the family members could get along together, and I think that was one of his proudest moments, proudest accomplishments, is that he could transition the business from first generation to second generation, and everybody got along quite well. Well, and I was 24. Tad's 50 today, and he's been president since 2013. But he looked at me and he goes, you were president 24. When's my turn? And I was a lot younger than my dad was at the time that I became 24. So, but he's done an excellent job. They've taught me they've taught me how to let go of things, how to transition things, how to give them more responsibility. I think I learned that from my dad, and it's a difficult thing to do because I'm still very active in the business. But they've shown me how to do those things, and they're doing an excellent job. Tad pretty much runs the day-to-day business operations in our tire business. I'm involved in a lot of other things. I'm here for strategic planning. I help them in the financial area and the finance area and work with them in that area. Mandy's the director of marketing, and in addition to raising her family, she's intricately involved in the day in day out activities as well.
So how do you balance honoring your father's legacy while making the company your own?
In many ways, I still consider it his company, to be very honest with you. I mean, I've always talked about the company. My dad, he built a foundation, and it was a much smaller company when we took over from it, and we've grown multiple times from the days back. And I mean, in 2000 and or excuse me, 1976 when I became president, we had two tire centers and a retread shop, basically a parts business and I think a bulk oil business. And today we're in 9 states with 35 locations and 5 retread shops and rim and wheel refinishing and multiple operations. And but I still look back and I think about it as the company that my dad founded, the foundation that he built, and not so much consider it my legacy as much as I still consider it his legacy.
Interesting. Because my next question was going to be, how do you preserve your legacy while giving Tad the ability to make it his own business? So, you're turning the reins over to Tad, and you've learned some of the stuff that you learned from your dad along the way.
Yeah, I've never really been concerned about that, to be very honest with you, John. I mean, I think everything that I've done over the years, I mean, I'm involved in a lot of different things between the NTDRA when I went through the chairs there, thanks to Don Olson, good friend Don Olson, I'm sure you know very well.
Oh yeah.
Got me into the NTDRA chairs, and so I got involved with that, and got involved with multiple other things over the years. I've served on a bank board, and I've chaired a bank, and I've served on other boards, and I've just done a lot of different things over the years that I think establish who I am. And it's not difficult for me to let the company transition on to Tad and Mandy and let them continue to grow and build, but never really thought much about how my legacy would be established, to be very honest with you.
Just made it happen. Just made it happen. I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. So, as you just said, Bauer Built has grown to 35 locations, but you always said it wasn't growth wasn't the goal. It was always profitability. How do you know? This is a question that I'm sure a lot of my listeners want to know. How do you know when to take risks and when to pull back when you're growing your business?
Well, I don't know if you ever know if it's the right thing to take the risk or not. You just got to be willing to take the risk and look at the pros and cons and what the potential opportunities are. We've closed more locations than we have open today. I mean, over the years, I wouldn't be surprised if we haven't acquired another 50 companies that we don't have today. That just didn't work out, and knowing when to hold them and when to fold them, so to speak, according to what
Kenny
was his name?
Rogers.
Kenny Rogers. Yeah.
Kenny.
That's we've been willing to take the risk, take a step forward. Sometimes you got to take a step backwards, and we've been disciplined and been able to do that. So I I don't know. I think it's just you just got to be willing to take the risk. They got to be controlled risk. You got to be able to manage your risk, and then it happens. And if it doesn't work out, you can't be afraid to say this doesn't work out. I'm gonna back away from it and do something different.
Jerry, we share the same philosophy, I believe. People buy from people. So the question is, how do you get all of your employees to understand that very important message when you're dealing with customers, whether they're the retail customer or their wholesale customer or commercial customer? How do you get that people buy from people philosophy to go throughout all of Bauer Built?
Yeah, and I think when I actually heard that from you, and I think it really went people buy from people they like. And it's very important how you nurture that relationship, whether it's with your employees, whether it's with your customers, whether it's even with your suppliers. The way you nurture the relationship is you talk to your people about it, you explain to your people. I mean, I can recall multiple times, and to be very honest with you, I've given you credit for that many times because you're the guy who first told me people like doing business with people that they like. And we'll sit in front of a business meeting with our salespeople and our managers, and we'll talk about, if you're not building and nurturing your relationship with your supplier, which seems funny, the supplier you would think would be trying to build a relationship with us, but we're talking to our people about if you don't build and nurture that relationship with your supplier and have a good relationship with your supplier, they're probably going to be working with one of their other customers and closer than with you. And you want them working with you. You want them helping you in many ways that they can help you. So nurture that relationship and build that relationship and become friends with not only your suppliers, your customers, but your employees. The way we nurture, we just practice it. It's part of our philosophy here that we like to do business with people we like, and we try to continue to nurture that relationship.
I've always admired, Jerry, your vision. And I remember the last time we were together about 7 years ago, I came into Durand. We had breakfast I remember right on the streets of downtown Durand there, and we were talking about, all the bank boards you're serving on and this private equity that you and a bunch of your buddies started up that had various companies, including retrofitting helicopters and stuff. So my question to you is, how do you use all of those experiences from the bank boards and your private equity companies, which seem to have nothing to do with the tire business, help shape Bauer Built today?
Early on when I started to get involved in some other activities, and it was really with the understanding that it had to provide some benefit to the tire company. I know when I went on my first board, um, I learned things not only at those board meetings. I learned things when I go to a dealer advisory meeting or when I go to a convention. I'm always got my eyes and ears open to try to pick up something that I can take back to the tire company and use to the benefit of the tire company. I'll tell you a funny story, okay? It was about 1980, and we were at a convention. I think it might have been a Band-Aid convention. I was there with my wife, my mom and dad, my brother and his wife, and my four brother-in-laws and their wives. And my wife came and said, well, they're going to the big final banquet, the dinner that night. And my wife come and said to me, "Hey, your sister's got a table over there. They're all over there. We're gonna go over there and sit down." And I go, "No, we're not." She goes, "Well, yeah, we got to go sit with the family." And I go, "No, we're not going to sit with them." I said, "We're not going to learn a thing sitting with all of them. And if they do know anything we don't know already, we can talk to them when we get home. We're going to go over there by those six people we don't know and sit with them and talk to them." And she was pretty young. We're still in our 20s probably, and pretty bashful and pretty shy. Sue and that. And she goes, "Really?" She didn't like the plan very much, but she understood the plan. And we went and talked to those strangers, and we learned things about their business and things that they did that we took back to our business and utilized them where we could for our benefit.
That's such great advice because I gave the same advice to all my people. I never wanted any of our teammates to sit together. If I saw that, that was my hot button. I'd say, hey, you're all to sit with customers. You're all to move around. In fact, Kim and I, when we show up at functions, I only see her for the first 5 minutes and then before we go home because we both float the room and we're out there building the relationships and talking and getting ideas and figuring out what's going on. And it's the way to do it. It really is. So glad to hear that. So your dad, if he was sitting across from you today, what would you want to tell him about Bauer Belt and everything that you've done so far, and now Ted is and Mandy is doing also?
I think he'd be so surprised how we've grown and how we've expanded. But what I probably really tell him about is how the family survived through the whole thing. I mean, through the first or the second generation, we really had no difficulties, no issues. Through attrition, my brother and brother-in-laws decided that it was time for them to retire and they wanted to step away. And they all knew I wasn't going anywhere. I was going to probably die in this business, and probably what will happen to me. And so that worked out well. But during those times, some of their kids got involved in the business, and I have a number. I mean, in addition to Tad being the president, my chief sales officer is a nephew of mine. My chief operating officer is a nephew of mine. One of our vice presidents of sales is a nephew of mine. There's probably I'm not sure, but there's probably 23rd and fourth generation. I'm the only second generation left in the business, but there's probably 23rd and fourth generation family members that are an integral part about it. They're playing active roles and very important roles in the organization. And I think to see the success ratio and succession from one generation to the next, if you read the statistics or look at that, are not real good. I think one of the things he'd be most proud of is how this has survived not only second generation, but is fully entrenched in third generation and doing quite well. And fourth generation are in the background waiting to be part of the next generation of the company. So I think that's what he'd really be proud of. My mom too. I lost my dad early. He was 75 when he passed away, but my mom lived till 103. So I hope I have that gene.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
103. God bless. Wow. That is awesome. That is awesome. So, sitting in your office, 24 years old, president of Bauer Built, in your first few months, what's one piece of advice if you could go back today to give your younger self some advice? What's one piece of advice you'd give your younger self when you were president in the first few months?
Don't ask my dad for help. There's a story behind that because I was sitting there about 3 months on the job as president, and if something could have went wrong, and my dad and I shared an office, we were kind of kitty corner from each other. And if something could have went wrong that day, it went wrong. I had a problem with a supplier. I had a problem with some advertising bill. I had a customer complaining to me, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to turn. And I said to my dad, I got all these problems. What should I do? He got up, put his coat on. It's the middle of winter. It's like January. Put his hat on. I looked at him. He turned in the door, and he said, I don't know what you're going to do, but I'm going to lunch. And he said, if you can't figure out how to solve all these issues when I get back from lunch, I might help you. And I didn't know if might help me might be he put somebody else in charge as president because I didn't know how to take care of it or what it is. But I skipped lunch that day and figured out how to take care of all my problems, and didn't ask him again.
That is an awesome story. That is an awesome story. Yeah, because yeah, you're not in charge anymore, kid. We're putting somebody else in charge.
Yeah.
I'd be worried about that too. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Anyway, these questions are called rapid fire, and I'm just going to shoot them at you, Jerry, and then give me the first response. So I know you're a Packer fan. Who's your all-time favorite Packer player?
Oh, that's a tough one. Because my quarterbacks keep leaving me, and then I disown them. I'd probably go with Bart Starr.
Okay, that's who I thought. That's who I thought. All
Yeah.
right. Now, if you had to pick another team in the NFC North, okay, and it was the Vikings, the Lions, or the Bears, which one would you be?
Well, that's a loaded question. With you on the other end of the call, that's kind of a loaded question. That is a very difficult question because I would probably go with Detroit, even though I know how a diehard Bear fan you are. I definitely would not go with Minnesota, and I'm going with Detroit.
Yeah, I actually was rooting for the Lions. As you could tell, my Bears didn't have a good season this year, so I was
Yeah.
rooting for them. What's your drink of choice?
I'm a beer drinker.
Awesome. What age when you changed your first tire?
Probably 16. My dad had the tire center here in town open in Durand on Sundays. And I didn't figure out until a couple of years later, and this is during my late high school years or the college years. And I think the only reason we're open Sunday is because he figured I needed to do something on Sunday afternoons. And I normally was the one running the tire center. So I'm there. There's this big grand opening for one of our local bars, and I was going to go down to it that night. And I was just about done. I was all excited. And I get a call, and there's from my brother, Jim. There's a semi truck down below town, got a flat tire. I go, I'm not, it's almost 5 o'clock. I'm done. I'm not doing that. And I tell my brother Jim this. And about 2 minutes later, my dad calls. He says, you got a problem with that service call? And I said, no, sir, I'm on my way. And so I headed down below town. And not only it's a right front on a semi truck, and it's over the side of the bank, and it's down, and I got to block it up and everything. And I was down there for like 3 hours, and I was going to be late for my big party I was going to go to. And I get the guy back to the tire center. And it was like the total bill was like $95. And the guy gives me $100 bill, and I thought, boy, this is going to be a $5 tip, and this is going to be. And money was pretty tight back in those days. I'm going to get a $5 tip out of this. Would be pretty good. He took his whole $5 change and left. Never gave me a tip or anything. I was so mad. So that was my story. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So, how would you describe summers in Durand, Wisconsin, for my audience who's never been to Durand? How would you describe it?
Oh, it's beautiful here. We live on a river, the Chippewa River. We're about 15 miles from the Mississippi River, and you can go out there and fish in that. It's just the area is just beautiful. The scenery is great. It's a small town, 1,900 people. I've been here, other than going to college for 4 years, all the way to Eau Claire, 30 miles away. I've been here my whole life, and just a great little town to visit.
For my viewers, when I drive up, I've drove up a couple times in the last 10 years, and you just come right into Durand. There's the green, the cows, you're seeing Bauer Built signs all over the place, like you own the, you do own the whole town and whatever. And it's like heaven. It really is. It's really like heaven. What's your favorite dealer trip you ever went on?
Oh, you took us over to, there were two of them, and they were Mediterranean cruises. But the one was, we were in Monte Carlo. Remember that? We were
Yep.
backed in, and I remember, I think Larry Morgan might have been with me. Ted Weens is normally with me.
Yep.
I think it was one of the first times I met Johnny Ziegler. What a character he is. And we were backed into the harbor at Monte Carlo, and they were practicing for the Grand Prix race. And I thought, boy, you hear the stories about the life of the rich and famous. Kind of almost felt like I was one of those rich and famous. They were sitting on the back of that boat. That was a great trip. And there was two of them in the Mediterranean cruises, and that were really great. The suppliers. It's one of the things in our industry. The suppliers provide a lot of great opportunities and great trips. And I don't know if the dealers tell you guys enough, but we really appreciate how well you treat us on those trips.
Going back to that Monte Carlo, I'll tell you a quick story now that nobody knows, and I can't get in trouble anymore because I've been retired for 17 years. But anyway, I got tickets for that race, and there was 100 of us with our wives. And I called the guy in Belgium at the time, and I said, "Hey, I got these 100 tickets. Are these really good seats?" He said, "Yeah, they're good seats, but you're going to see a car coming whizzing around the corner, and then that's it. Monte Carlo's got this whole big strip that it goes down and around by the water and everything." I said, "Well, what are better tickets?" He said, "Well, they're called rooftops." I said, "What are
Mm-hmm.
rooftops?" He said, "Well, those are people that rent out their condos and stuff, and you got a whole view of the whole race." And I said, "Wow, let's do that. I mean, we're only going to do this once probably in our life." I said, "How much are rooftops?" He said, "Well, I'll call you back in a couple of days and see what I can come up with." And he said, "For your 100 people, you're going to need two rooftops, okay?" And he said, "So the good news is I'll get you face value for your tickets." And I think they were $500 a piece. So I got 50 grand for that. He said, "But one rooftop is going to cost you $70,000, and another rooftop's going to cost you $130,000. So it's going to cost you $200,000. So a net $150,000. But Jer, was it the best thing to do to have a rooftop view?
It was great. It was really great.
Last rapid fire question. Your idea of a dream vacation with your beautiful wife, Sue.
Well, if you ask my wife that, she'd say one that doesn't include 100 other tire dealers because we've gone on, because she says every trip we've gone on for the last 50 years we were married 50 years in December. And so every trip we've
Oh,
been on for the last 50 years, there's normally 50 or 100 other tire dealers with us. So she'd say the best trip to go is when just her and I go. And I would agree with her. Someplace where my wife and
that,
I can go together and just enjoy each other.
awesome. Awesome. Great answer. Great answer.
Hey, John, for
Yep.
a site though, as a follow up to that question, for a site,
Yes.
you might remember this, Portofino, Italy. We were there on one of
Oh,
those
yes.
cruises. And I remember when I was there telling Sue, they could leave me here. I could live here the rest of my life.
Remember we went for lunch up at Hotel Splendino up on top? Yeah,
Yep.
that's
Yep.
for the viewers that have not been there, we got dropped off. So we were on, I think, the Canard. I think it was only 50 of us, and it was a
Yeah.
small boat. And we got dropped off in Portofino there. It's a little fishing village, and it's got all nice restaurants, and it's so relaxed, so peaceful. And then we walked all the way up the hill to the top of the mountain there where Hotel Splendino was, and had lunch. And Kim and I were back there 6, 7 years ago, and brought some great memories back. Yeah, that was beautiful. That's where we actually went to as France. We visited perfume factories, and we were in Monte Carlo, and that was one of the better trips. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That was great. Great trip. Yep. Yep. A lot of fun.
So, my friend, it's been great talking with you today. Thanks for being a guest on Johnny G and Friends, and say hello to all my friends in Durand, Wisconsin, including all your family members.
Well, I thank you too, John, for including me in your podcast. It was really interesting. I enjoyed our opportunity to catch up and just the conversations and the stories about the history. I mean, we go back so many years, and that it was just fun chatting, whether it goes on a podcast or not. It was just great to catch up.
So, my friend, thanks again for being the first guest on season 5 of Johnny G and Friends. I really appreciate it, my friend.
You don't need magic to disappear for a while, because Firestone tires were built for ticking off mile markers. Firestone Destination LE3 tires. For 70,000 miles of exploring. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone.